In the city of Akron, two families gathered for a big barbecue in a beautiful backyard garden with a sparkling infinity pool and a view of downtown. The Chukwu and Abiola families always had their Sunday feast together after church, switching homes each week. This time, Nwanyoma and her husband, Nwokoma, sat holding hands, whispering sweet words to each other. Suddenly, Urenna called out, "Hey, lovebirds, can't you see your kids are making the pool dirty?" Nwanyoma quickly jumped up and rushed to get her 3 children out of the pool. She scolded them gently. "Sit with your father now and behave," she said, sending them over to Nwokoma, who was chatting with his friend Echezona. Nwanyoma then headed to the kitchen where Urenna was busy. "Urenna, your kitchen is amazing. I can't get over how beautiful it is," Nwanyoma complimented, her eyes wide with admiration. Urenna waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, it's nothing special, Nwanyoma. Of course, you've never seen anything like it," she replied without even looking at her, brushing her off as if she didn't matter. "I don't need your help. The maids have everything under control. Go and relax in the garden." Feeling a bit hurt with Urenna's tone, Nwanyoma went back to the garden. Nwokoma saw the sadness in her eyes and gave her a gentle kiss on the forehead. At sunset, when the street lights began to glow, the Abiola family walked back to their house, which was right across from the Chukwu's home. They held hands with Nwokoma, watching the children as they ran ahead to greet their grandfather. Nwokoma turned to his wife, Nwanyoma, gently brushing the hair from her face. "Darling, every time we come back from the Chukwu's, you seem sad. Did something happen?" Nwokoma asked, holding her hand and looking concerned. "No, darling, it's nothing you should worry about," Nwanyoma said, pulling her husband's hand to lead him inside. Nwokoma still reassured her, saying, "If these Sunday feasts make you unhappy, we can stop doing them." When they entered the house, they found Nwokoma's father in the living room, chatting with the grandchildren about their visit. "Grandpa, I don't like Mrs. Chukwu. She always shouts and frowns at us. I don't want to go there anymore," one grandchild said, looking upset. "Listen, my dear, the Chukwus are our family friends. Mr. Chukwu has been your father's best friend and employer since before you were born. Mr. Chukwu is a kind and good man, isn't he?" Mr. Abiola asked his grandson, who nodded reluctantly and left the room. "Father, have you eaten yet?" Nwanyoma asked her father-in-law, getting up to fix him some food. "No, daughter. Sit down and relax. I will eat later. You just rest with your husband," Mr. Abiola said with a caring voice. Urenna stood on the balcony of her big house, watching the Abiola family cross the street to their smaller, simpler home. She kept watching even after they went inside. After a while, she went downstairs and found her maids cleaning the house. "Hurry up, why are you so slow?" she complained to the maids. "Make sure all the guests' mess is cleaned up. I don't even know why my husband keeps having these Sunday feasts with people like the Abiolas. They are way beneath us." The next Sunday after church, Urenna and her husband, Echezona, went to the Abiola's house. When they arrived, Nwokoma's father greeted them. "Good day, uncle. Where is Nwanyoma? You all didn't come to church today. Is everything all right?" Urenna asked. Mr. Abiola replied quietly, "They are in the backyard." The Chukwus walked to the backyard and found Nwokoma grilling, while Nwanyoma made salads and set the table. Nwokoma saw them and came over to greet them. As everyone sat down to eat, Nwokoma held his wife's hand tightly and shared the sad news about his illness. "I have a terminal illness," he said softly. Nwanyoma hugged his arm, tears in her eyes. Echezona, heartbroken, asked, "Is there anything we can do?" Nwokoma and Nwanyoma shook their heads sadly. The mood was heavy with sadness and loss. Suddenly, Urenna broke the silence. "I forgot my own utensils. I can't use these," she said, making a fuss. She sent one of the Abiola children to get her utensils from her house. Echezona was furious. Urenna, was that really necessary? Nwokoma was sharing something important. He snapped, pulling her inside their house after they left the Abiola's house. You are so insensitive. You think Nwokoma is more important than my preferences. Just because his father worked for your father doesn't make Nwokoma your friend. He's a servant's son, you hear me? Urenna shot back. Echezona, unable to contain his anger, threw the utensils away. At that moment, your spoons were more important than his health. Is this about Nwanyoma? Urenna yelled, following Echezona to the bedroom. You think I don't see how you look at her? She may be kind and beautiful, but I'm your wife. You should take my side. Can I please shower now? I can't do this again, Echezona said, walking to the shower, turning on the water. Urenna stood there, fuming, before storming off back to the bedroom, where she angrily threw the pillows and bedding on the floor. As time passed, Nwokoma's illness made him weaker. Unable to eat hard food, he became much thinner and unrecognizable until he could no longer get out of bed. This made Nwanyoma very sad. She used to be the one who was loved and cared for, but now she was the one taking care of her husband. She often cried, seeing her strong husband turn into someone so frail. Nwokoma, who used to comfort and cherish Nwanyoma, now relied on her for everything. She stayed by his side, holding his hand and comforting him. It was a hard time for both of them. One evening, as the sun set and the room was quiet, Nwokoma knew his time was near. He held Nwanyoma's hand tightly, his father sitting close by. Dear, he whispered, you have made me the happiest man in the world. When I am gone, find love again and take care of our children and my father, just like you always have. With these words, Nwokoma closed his eyes for the last time, ending their 10 years of a happy marriage. Echezona tried his best to comfort the Abiola family during these tough times. He felt heartbroken that he only found out about his friend's illness in the final days. They stopped having their Sunday lunches together, and Echezona missed those happy moments. After Nwokoma passed away, Nwanyoma mourned her husband for a whole year. During this time, Echezona often visited the Abiola house and helped out with money where he could, staying late into the night. He would sit by the fireplace with Mr. Abiola, chatting and laughing, while Urenna paced back and forth in their own home, waiting for her husband to return. When Echezona finally came back one night, he found Urenna furious. Why are you always at the Abiola's house? She demanded. I'm sorry, Urenna. I lost track of time. Mr. Abiola was telling me old stories and I couldn't stop him, Echezona explained. Are you sure you were with Mr. Abiola? Or was it Nwanyoma? Urenna accused. Why are you so obsessed with Nwanyoma? It's exhausting, Echezona replied, frustrated. I just don't like her. She acts too perfect. There is something about her which is similar to someone I used to know who steals other people's men. Urenna snapped. I don't know what to say, Urenna. I'm tired of your constant nagging. If you don't believe me, go ask the Abiolas yourself, Echezona said, jumping into bed to sleep. Urenna, still angry, kept shaking him to talk, but he turned away, closing his eyes. In a cozy office, Echezona looked at Nwanyoma and smiled. Nwanyoma, you remind me of someone I used to know. Her name was Nnedemma, he said, his face showing a mix of happiness and sadness as he remembered. As Nwanyoma filled out some forms, Urenna suddenly appeared at the door. She heard Echezona mention Nnedemma and stormed in, walking slowly but with anger in her eyes. What are you doing here at my husband's company? She demanded, glaring at Nwanyoma. Before Nwanyoma could answer, Echezona stepped in. Nwanyoma doesn't have to explain anything to you, he said, trying to protect her. This made Urenna even angrier. She started screaming at Nwanyoma, calling her a home wrecker. Echezona tried to calm her down, but she wouldn't listen. Nwanyoma, feeling embarrassed and hurt, quickly left the office, covering her face as Urenna continued to shout. Echezona ran after Nwanyoma to comfort her, but she shook her head. "Go back to your wife and stop following me," she said, not wanting to talk. When Echezona returned to his office, he found his employees pretending to be busy, trying not to show that they had seen the fight. Urenna was sitting in his chair, spinning around like she owned the place. "Explain to me what you were doing alone with her. How will you explain to people that you love your wife's friend?" Urenna demanded. "Since when is Nwanyoma your friend?" "Nothing is going on between us, Urenna," Echezona replied. "I was helping her with her husband's paperwork. It's been almost 2 years since he passed, and I was just helping her with the forms." "But why did you have to do it? Your secretary could have helped," Urenna argued. "Nwanyoma is my friend's wife, and I wanted to be there for her," Echezona explained, showing Urenna the forms. "This is just like when we were young. You would threaten every girl who got close to me. Now it's happening all over again." Their argument went on until Urenna felt she said enough, leaving the office in silence. Nwanyoma came home with a troubled look on her face. Her father-in-law, Mr. Abiola, noticed right away. "Nwanyoma, what's wrong? Is it about the money you went to claim?" "No, Papa, it's not that," Nwanyoma replied, shaking her head. She explained what happened at Echezona's office. Mr. Abiola sighed. "I know my niece, Urenna, very well. Stay away from her." At sunset, a loud car horn sounded outside. Nwanyoma and Mr. Abiola looked out the window. They were surprised to see Echezona and all of Nwanyoma's kids carrying bags full of groceries into the house. They couldn't believe their eyes. There were so many bags, filled with everything they needed and more. Mr. Abiola spoke up. "Echezona, you don't need to bring us all this, and please, you have to stop coming here." Echezona nodded sadly and left the house, heading to his car. As he walked, he glanced up and saw his wife, Urenna, glaring at him from their balcony. He knew a fight was coming. He felt defeated as he got into his car and reversed to his yard, but inside, he longed to see Nwanyoma again. Being apart from her made him realize his feelings for her. For the next few weeks, Echezona struggled to keep his feelings to himself. Whenever he came home to Urenna's constant arguing, he missed the laughter and joy at the Abiola's house, especially seeing Nwanyoma playing with her kids. He felt lonely and just wanted to see her, even for a second. One day, Echezona gathered all his courage and went to the Abiola's house. Mr. Abiola wasn't happy to see him, but after they talked, Echezona left with a smile on his face. Urenna noticed that her husband was helping Nwanyoma more and more. Echezona would go shopping with Nwanyoma and come back with lots of groceries. Mr. Abiola was pleased to see them together, knowing Nwanyoma was happy with someone kind and trustworthy. Every day after work, Echezona rushed to the Abiola's house. Urenna watched as her husband spent more time there than with her. She saw how happy he looked, and it became clear that Echezona and Nwanyoma were in love. They acted like teenagers, going on vacations and treating each other with care. Urenna noticed that Echezona stopped providing her with the luxurious lifestyle and allowances she used to. She chose her words carefully and argued less, realizing her power was slipping away. She thought of ways to break their love, but Echezona made sure she had no money to do so. Little by little, he moved some of his clothes to Nwanyoma's house. That year, Nwanyoma found out she was pregnant. Echezona was over the moon with joy. He thought he would never have a baby again. He started planning, expanding the Abiola's house so all their children had their own rooms. Mr. Abiola was happy to see Nwanyoma treated with love and care. Around the dinner table, they sat together as a big family. Echezona couldn't believe he was so happy. He had only known shouts and accusations from Urenna. One evening, Mr. Abiola said to Echezona, "You have to do right by my daughter. She loves you, and I don't want to see her hurt. Protect her from that lunatic of a wife you have." Echezona agreed and asked, "Why do you love Wanyoma so much, as if she were your own daughter?" Mr. Abiola looked down, his eyes sad. "I've known Wanyoma since she was very young. 2 years before she married my son, Mokoma, I found her in a ditch, beaten to death with her skin burned badly. I took her to the hospital and raised money for her surgery. Her voice was gone, maybe from the shock." Tears streamed down Mr. Abiola's cheeks. "My boss, your father, gave me the funds to find the best doctors for her. When she came back, I tried to find her family on radios, television, and newspapers, but no one came for her. She couldn't talk, so I named her Wanyoma, meaning good woman. She stayed with us, and when my wife got sick, Wanyoma took care of her like a daughter. She would bathe and feed her with her own hands." Mr. Abiola paused, taking a breath. "When my son fell in love with her, they spent so much time laughing together in the garden. One day, Wanyoma began laughing aloud, a beautiful sound. Unfortunately, my wife didn't live to see their love." Mr. Abiola couldn't speak anymore, breaking down in tears. Echezona felt uncomfortable seeing the elderly man cry. Mr. Abiola told him he would finish the story another day. Echezona loved spending time with Wanyoma. They would relax in their bedroom, with Echezona gently rubbing Wanyoma's baby bump. "Wanyoma," he said softly, "I thought I'd never find love again. You've shown me that anything is possible. I love you so much for that." Wanyoma smiled and teased him. "You love me for that only?" "Of course not," Echezona chuckled. "You are beautiful, caring, kind, and have a big heart. I could say it all day. You remind me of someone," he said, suddenly looking sad. "My love, you always look sad when you say that. Who do I remind you of?" Wanyoma asked gently. Echezona took a deep breath and began. "Before I married Urenna, I was with a woman named Nnedimma. She was very beautiful, just like you. She was my first love. Trouble started when she became friends with Urenna. Urenna came to my house with your father-in-law, who worked as my father's driver. He begged my father to give Urenna a job as a maid. Urenna then stayed with us since she had no parents. I felt sorry for her and was kind to her, but she mistook my kindness for love and started fighting any girl who came near me. But with Nnedimma, I refused to let Urenna come between us. On our wedding day, after our vows and marriage ceremony, Nnedimma went to change for our wedding reception. And then, Nnedimma went missing and was never found. Her mother died of grief, and no one ever saw Nnedimma again. During my grief, Urenna was there for me, and I married her a few months later. It was the worst mistake of my life. My life with Urenna has been hell. My family didn't support our marriage, especially my mother, because she was friends with Nnedimma's mother and knew Nnedimma was a good and kind woman. My family distanced themselves from our marriage. It got worse when we couldn't have children. We went to doctors and found nothing wrong with both of us. My family then insisted I marry a second wife, or they would cut all ties and wealth with us. I refused, but Urenna, because she wanted me to inherit the family business portion, agreed. But each time we got close to a marriage proposal for a second wife, Urenna would change her mind or not like the lady or her family. Now, here we are, almost 14 years later, and I have never known peace in my house." Echezona and Wanyoma wept together, comforting each other. Wanyoma started blaming herself, but Echezona hushed her, insisting it wasn't her fault. Meanwhile, Urenna was left alone in her big house, without maids or a husband. She realized that her constant yelling would only push him further away. Desperate, she decided to get rid of Wanyoma for good. She began to treat Echezona with a little respect, hoping to win him back, but it was too late. Seeing Echezona carrying the heavily pregnant Wanyoma into their house, disturbed her even more. She saw her husband showing so much love and care he had never even shown her. Am I just destined to suffer? Urena questioned herself each time she saw her husband happy and in love over there by the Abiolas. The Chukwus were planning a meeting at Urena and Echezona's house. Echezona's family wanted him to marry Wanyoma since they heard the news of her pregnancy, but Urena had always opposed the idea of marrying Wanyoma. In her desperation, Urena reached out to a friend who could make Wanyoma disappear. Her friend kidnapped Wanyoma but demanded payment to finish the job. On the day of the meeting, Wanyoma was missing. Echezona and his father were frantic, searching and reporting her disappearance. Mr. Abiola knew it was Urena and went to confront her. Urena, it's been over 15 years and you don't want your past to resurface. Let my daughter go. No, uncle. Do you know what I went through to marry Echezona? Urena shouted. I worked so hard to get Echezona to marry me and to at least like me. I will never let your daughter take that away from me. I am not going back to poverty. Yes, I know. You have worked more than hard, including having blood on your hands, and it's time for you to face the consequences, Mr. Abiola replied. Urena, feeling cornered, went to her friend to get Wanyoma. She tried to intimidate Wanyoma. Wanyoma, why do you get to have everything? You are beautiful. Everyone loves you. Your late husband treated you like an egg, and now my husband is doing the same. Why, Wanyoma, why? Urena screamed at Wanyoma, promising to hurt her. You mean like what you did to Nnedimma? Wanyoma asked. How do you know about Nnedimma? Who are you? Urena was now scared, realizing her past was catching up with her. I'll tell you soon enough, Wanyoma replied. Urena, now panicking, took Wanyoma back to her father-in-law. Mr. Abiola welcomed them inside as guests waited. Echezona hugged Wanyoma, checking to make sure she was okay. Wanyoma was taken to bathe while the family discussed the marriage plans. Urena protested. I won't allow this. This home wrecker will not take my husband. That will happen over my dead body. That can be arranged, Echezona's father said, and immediately Urena kept quiet. You don't need to allow it, Urena. You won't be here to witness it, Wanyoma said, coming to join the families. Echezona nodded his head, giving Wanyoma approval to speak. Urena, as I lay in the ditch, gasping for breath, thinking it was my last breath, I cursed you. I cursed you that a cruel woman like you, who can do that to someone's child, must never carry a child of her own. I begged you after your guys hit me with a cricket bat. You poured acid on my face and left me to die on my wedding day. Because of you, I only grieved for my mother after a year. Your desire for wealth and power has taken somebody's life, and you never repented. Wanyoma kneeled before everyone, crying like a child. Echezona tried to comfort her. You say I am a home wrecker when you went for my husband. The only home wrecker here is you, Wanyoma cried painfully. Everyone was now looking at Urena, who was trying to leave the room. Oh my God, is this my beautiful Nnedimma? Poor child, even in your new face, you are still as beautiful as ever. Echezona's mother hurried to Wanyoma to embrace her. Everyone in the room and Echezona's sisters started exclaiming. I knew she was evil. I have always said it now, one sister said. Uncle, please help me. You are my only family. You can't let them treat me this way now. She is lying, Urena said, holding her uncle's hands, begging. Now I am your family. How many times did I reprimand you to stop your ways, and you told me I am just a driver? How many women disappeared that were closer to Echezona? Mr. Abiola asked and continued. Actually, I know she is not lying. That night, when you took another driver and your thug friends, I followed you. Unfortunately, I didn't know you had a Nnedimma. By the time I got to her, she was burning with acid, and I rushed her to the hospital. Her skin was gone, and she had plastic surgery. I had no proof it was you because when I arrived, you and your friends were pulling away. Nnedimma couldn't talk for more than a year, so she spoke much later, and you were already married to Echezona, and she was in love with Nwokoma. But today, you shall surely pay for all your sins. Echezona also supported Mr. Abiola and told everyone Nwanyoma had told him everything when he proposed to marry her, and that he got his Nnedimma back. Ma'am, you are under arrest for kidnapping and attempted murder of Nwanyoma Abiola, an officer said, handcuffing Urenna. Everyone gasped in horror at Urenna's cruelty. Echezona, stunned, looked away from Urenna while embracing Nwanyoma, both in tears, as the police took the screaming Urenna away. Echezona, please, I did it because I love you. I love you so much. I wanted you to only love me. 1 month later, Echezona and Nwanyoma were married. Together with their 4 children and her father-in-law, they lived happily ever after. The end.